Hello everyone, it's Shannon here for Pinkfresh Studio. In today's video, we are going to create this floral card featuring the Botanical Bunch Stamps, Dies, and Stencils. I'm also going to share with you how I choose my colors when I'm using layering stencil sets. We're going to start with the Botanical Bunch stamp set. I'm going to place it in my MISTI, which is kind of key today because I am going to stamp this twice. I do have my panel nice and nestled in the corner, and I'm going to ink up my image in soft violet. You could definitely use a black, but the detail black from Pinkfresh takes a little bit longer to dry, so I went with one of the dye inks. And I just chose this purple because it's one of the colors I'm going to be ink blending with. Now I'm moving on to the stencils. So this stencil set has 6 stencils. And when I'm choosing my colors, I look at the back as a guide. That's really important to see what kind of colors they used and how you can kind of see there's like yellow flowers and kind of that mauve-y colored flowers, and then I'll look at the stencil so I understand how these flowers are going to layer up. And as you can see, the yellow flowers, actually the yellow is a base, and then the other layers get layered on top of that. And that's really important because if you need to understand what colors are going to be layered actually on top and not just kind of side by side. And because they're going to be layered on top, I want to make sure for those yellow flowers I'm picking colors that are cohesive, colors that will layer on top of each other nicely. So that's kind of some of my tips is before you start ink blending, really look at the stamps or look at the stencils, how they layer, and look at the guide in the back. It's very helpful. So I went ahead and lined up the first stencil with my stamped image, and this first stencil actually ink blends the base for all those yellow flowers. So I kept it simple and went with yellow, and I'm going to ink blend them with this beautiful marigold color. So I'm going to quickly ink blend all of the openings in this layer with that marigold color. I do kind of attempt to make a little gradation by being a little bit more heavy-handed with the marigold in some places, but that ultimately gets kind of covered up anyway, so I wouldn't worry about it. Now we're on to stencil 2. For this stencil, I have 3 colors picked out. For the yellow flowers, I'm going to ink blend them in orange. Now the other remaining flowers, I have 2 colors picked out, a purple and a pink. I'm going to start with the purple and just ink blend the lower kind of third of the flowers, except for that one little straggler yellow. I'm going to ink blend those with that soft lilac. Once I finish with that, I'll move on to my pink, which is bubblegum, and ink blend the kind of middle section of flowers. Again, skipping, not ink blending the one yellow flower that's in the center there. And then I'll finish up with this Clementine, which is an orange for all of those yellow flowers, which are now going to look like orange because I'm moving over to the warm orange colors for those. So now that I've finished with that stencil, I've went ahead and lined up stencil 3. We have 3 new ink colors, progressively darker than the previous. This lavender is going to be where we ink blended the soft lilac, and I'm going to be very kind of light here because I'm going to use this lavender for our 4th detail layer for the flowers. Then I'm moving on to Raspberry Bliss and ink blending this pink over all the pink flowers, again avoiding the yellow flower or orange flowers. Also being light with that Raspberry Bliss, and then finishing up the orange flowers with Persimmon, which is a really nice dark orange. And those are kind of scattered around, so I just hit those with that Persimmon. Now we're moving on to the 4th stencil. This is the last detail layer for the flowers. Most of the remaining flowers are pink and purple. There is one little orange flower at the upper left. I'm going to start with lavender for the purple flowers and be really heavy-handed with it so I get contrast from the previous stencil or the previous layer. And now I'm on to Raspberry Bliss, again being very heavy-handed so I have contrast from the previous Raspberry Bliss. And I did use that Raspberry Bliss on that last remaining orange flower, and because it's on top of orange colors, that Raspberry Bliss basically looks orange anyways. With our flowers all done, we are ready to move on to our leaves, starting with Fresh Pear for kind of the tips of the leaves. And then once I finish with that, we're going to go on to Aquamarine and ink blend everywhere else. Kind of create a little gradation up to that Fresh Pear, but be pretty heavy-handed with that Aquamarine. Now that we're done with that, I'm going to move on to the 6th stencil and our final layer. This is Tidal Pond, and I'm just going to ink blend all the openings very heavy-handedly with this beautiful rich teal color, and that will create a lot of contrast and will finish all of our coloring for these flowers. Now we're going to stamp this a second time, so I'm going to pop it back into my MISTI. I'm going to ink it up with that detail black, and then I will stamp over my stenciled images, and now I have this beautiful dark crisp black outline around them. Really cleans them up and looks so pretty. Next, I went ahead and die cut this out with the Botanical Bunch matching die, and here you can see how beautiful it is. There's even a few little openings inside the die, and I love that. It creates more of a lacy floral image. Now we're moving on to this super awesome ornate oval frame, and I die cut it out of some mirrored gold cardstock. Now we're going to tuck these flowers into this frame, so I'm just going to kind of work them into place, and once I get them in place, I'll then grab a pencil and kind of trace around that bottom portion where that's kind of sticking out, and I'm going to actually cut that off so it looks like these flowers are coming up out of the frame. So after I traced that bottom edge, I removed the tape and popped my flowers out, and now I'm just going to cut along that pencil line. And actually you do want to cut a little bit beyond the pencil line because there's openings in that ornate frame, and I don't want the flowers to be seen in those openings. So I just went ahead and cut that, and now I'm popping it back in here, that frame, just to see how it fits, and it looks great. So now we're ready to move on to the next step. So now we're going to take our A2 top folding white card base and just add a little bit of accents here with that Botanical Bunch stamp. So I popped it here into my MISTI, and I'm just going to stamp the sides of my card front, just a little bit of that floral image. I think it just adds a little bit more interest to our card and incorporates the black, which we will have in our sentiment later. So I stamped just that left edge. Now I repositioned my card, and I'm stamping now the right edge, or right side rather, of the card also in black, and that will complete kind of that little detail on our card front. Now we're moving on to our sentiment. I have the new Modern Script Sentiments stamp set. I'm going to stamp it onto some black cardstock. I'd applied some anti-static powder. Now I'm inking up my stamp in Versamark ink. Then I will stamp my panel. Next, I will pour over some white embossing powder and just heat set this with with my heat tool, of course. This is an awesome set from Pinkfresh. Again, it creates a whole bunch of sentiments really quick and easy. And now I'm going to use that awesome Modern Script Sentiments die to die cut them out all quickly. And then I'll have a bunch of these sentiments ready to go for other cards later. So I'm just popping them out here after I ran that through my die cutting machine, and they look great. And I can't wait to add one to my card front. Now I'm ready to kind of wrap it all up here. I'm first going to reposition my flowers, then grab some liquid adhesive, add a little bit to the backside of my frame just to kind of hold those flowers in place. Then I will grab some foam adhesive, and I'm going to add that to the backside of the frame and the flowers. Once I get that foam adhesive on the back, I'll then just remove the backing, and then we'll be ready to kind of add this to our card front. We're just going to center this between the two beautiful black stamped sides, which I think really frame this nicely. And then we're ready to move on to our sentiment. So I've already went ahead and added some foam adhesive to the back side of it. I'll just place it down here on the at the lower right, and that will actually complete the card. I'll hold to the camera here so you can see. I am going to kind of poof up the edges of these flowers a little bit just to give even more dimension. It just is a nice way to kind of soften the edge a little. And here's the finished card. I really love how this turned out. I love those flowers. I love that combination of colors. I think it really pops and just looks so pretty with that mirrored gold frame and the little bit of black that we stamped on the sides. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video. If any questions about the products I use, please check out the links below in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.